Welcome to the West Wing Week, your guide to everything that's happening at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and beyond. This week, the president urged Congress not to let student loan rates double and to confirm 3 judges for the Federal Appeals Court in Washington. Held bilateral meetings with the NATO Secretary-General and the President of Chile, kicked off a national conference on mental health, honored the Super Bowl champions, and announced a major new initiative called Connect Ed, while the Vice President wrapped up a week-long tour to South America. That's May 31st to June 6th, or cooler at night.
I think it's cooler seen at night with the black background. Yeah. You know, just sitting there.
On Friday, the Vice President and Dr. Jill Biden returned from a trip to Trinidad and Tobago, Colombia, and Brazil. For a quick recap, we go aboard Air Force Two with the VP and Dr. Biden in South America. In Colombia, after visiting the Botero Art Museum, Dr. Biden visited a vocational school in Bogota with Colombian First Lady Maria Clemencia Santos. The Vice President met with President Juan Miguel Santos before visiting a flower farm that provides jobs to local women and flowers to the United States. After a Memorial Day wreath laying, the VP and Dr. Biden then headed on to Trinidad and Tobago, where they arrived in Port of Spain to the sound of steel drums. After meeting with the President, the Prime Minister, and a host of other Caribbean leaders, the VP signed a trade and investment framework agreement with Caribbean Community Chair President Martelly of Haiti. Then, the Vice President departed for Brazil. In Rio de Janeiro, the Vice President and Dr. Biden both visited neighborhoods called favelas. Dr. Biden visited a community center in Favela Cantagalo. The Vice President visited police officers in Favela Santa Marta, who have transformed the neighborhood through highly effective community policing methods. The Vice President then gave a speech on the U.S.-Brazil partnership at a pier in Rio before visiting the Brazilian energy company, Petrobras. He then held a roundtable with Brazilian business leaders before taking a trip up Corcovado Mountain to see the statue of Christ the Redeemer up close.
All right, can't go too far. My flash won't work.
Departing Rio, the Vice President made a final stop in Brazil's capital, Brasilia, where he met with President Rousseff and Vice President Temer in Brasilia's uniquely designed government buildings that have earned the city a spot on the UNESCO World Heritage List. That's all from South America, so let's go back to the Rose Garden, where the President was making a statement asking Congress to prevent federal student loan rates from doubling on July 1st and urging students to speak out in favor of more affordable college loans.
We've got to make sure that federal student loan rates don't double on July 1st.
Before the speech, the President met with college students in the Roosevelt Room and underscored the importance of young people all across the country making their voices heard in this debate.
We did a good job last year in making sure that student loan rates did not go up. I believe that we can be successful again this year.
Then, the President sat down with NATO Secretary-General Rasmussen to discuss improvements in NATO's capabilities and the progress of U.S.-NATO coordination in Afghanistan and Libya. Meanwhile, across town at the D.C. Convention Center, judging commenced on original lunchtime recipes submitted by families as part of this year's Kids State Dinner, a signature part of the First Lady's Let's Move initiative.
Some scallions and quinoa and shrimp. Killer.
On Saturday, the White House held its second hackathon as part of the National Day of Civic Hacking, a nationwide event where technology experts, civic activists, and entrepreneurs develop software to help others. At the White House, more than 30 participants came together to build applications leveraging the new We the People API, which means Application Programming Interface, for those of us who didn't know that. On Monday, the White House hosted the National Conference on Mental Health. An estimated 45 million Americans suffer from illnesses like depression, schizophrenia, or post-traumatic stress disorder. So to kick off the national conversation, the President opened the conference by focusing on reducing stigma and improving access to mental health care.
Too many Americans who struggle with mental health illnesses are still suffering in silence rather than seeking help.
On Tuesday, the President nominated 3 judges to the U.S. Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C., and urged the Senate to set aside politics and move quickly to hold confirmation votes. Then, the President met with President Piñera of Chile in the Oval Office, where they discussed their shared values, U.S.-Chilean trade partnerships, and the Visa Waiver program. The President then welcomed Myrlie Evers Williams and her family to the Oval Office to honor her work as a civil rights activist and journalist who worked for more than 3 decades to seek justice for the 1963 murder of her husband and civil rights leader Medgar Evers. On Wednesday, the President hosted the Super Bowl champion Baltimore Ravens at the White House. Later, the President appeared before the news media in the Rose Garden to make an announcement.
And I am extraordinarily proud to announce my new National Security Advisor, Susan Rice, as well as my nominee to replace Susan in New York, Samantha Power.
Later, the president invited a group of students from Harper High School in Chicago to visit with him in the Oval Office. Back in April, the First Lady visited their school in Chicago to hear firsthand about their experiences at their public school, one that has been profoundly affected by violence. 29 current or former students have been shot in the past year.
I just want everybody here to just have that determination, sense of resilience, and being willing to overcome stuff. Understand that nothing you do is going to be worthwhile unless you work hard on it. Because let's face it, the world's never perfectly fair, but we can make it more fair.
On Thursday, as part of his middle-class jobs and opportunity tour, the president traveled to Mooresville Middle School in North Carolina to see firsthand the school's cutting-edge curriculum that maximizes the benefits of technology and digital learning, to make a major announcement on a new program called Connect Ed that will bring high-speed internet to classrooms like these all across the country. To find out more information on any of these second-term topics or to see complete videos of these events, go to whitehouse.gov. And thanks again for checking out your West Wing Week.
This is a great view here, isn't it? Mm-hmm. By the way, guys, that was brought up all one piece, you know? I'm only joking. I'm always joking. You know, wow. Pretty neat, isn't it? Look at the stadium over there.